Good afternoon. Welcome to the February 16th session of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates. I'll call this meeting to order, and we will begin, as usual, with a moment of silence to honor our troops who have died in service to our country and all those serving our country in the armed forces. Thank you, and now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll.
Richard Anderson.
Here.
Cheryl Andrews.
Here.
Ronald Bergstrom.
Yes, here.
Leo Kukunis.
Here.
Christopher Kanega.
Here.
James Killian.
Here.
Marcia King.
Here.
Thomas Lynch.
Here.
Teresa Martin.
Here.
Deborah McCutcheon. Spiro Mitrakostas.
Here.
John Oman.
Here.
Paul Pilcher.
Here.
Anthony Scalise.
Here.
Julia Taylor.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, we have a quorum with 100% of the delegates.
Wow. Okay, thank you. We'll now need an approval of the calendar of business.
Mr. Speaker, I would move that we amend the calendar of business to include under number 11, where it says communication from members of the public, charter review discussion.
It's on under assembly, though. He's including. You're including it under
Committee as a whole.
under the committee as a whole. Okay. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Mr. Speaker, the only reason why I make that motion is because I noticed that in the audience today we have a number of people who have driven a long way and are here to make comment on that, and I feel that maybe there may be some questions from the members of the Assembly, and maybe we can have some discussion, and then when we actually convene, we'll be able to discuss it amongst ourselves.
Okay. I'm, of course, under communications from members of the public, they're entitled to say anything they want, but I think this is an attempt by Leo to make it give it a more of an official capacity. But anyway, it's been moved and seconded. Any further comment? Yes, Cheryl.
Am I understanding then that
Microphone, please.
Am I understanding then, Mr. Speaker, that item 13 will remain on the agenda?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom?
You know, I think if we were going to make this change, I think we probably should have had it on the agenda so that members of the Business Roundtable or others that have ideas, or certain county commissioners who have ideas, might want to have participated in that discussion. So I prefer to leave it under the General Assembly discussion.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, the noes have it. So much for the public.
I move that we approve the calendar.
Microphone, please.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the calendar as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we now go to the approval of the Journal of February 2nd. We do not have the Journal of February 2nd, unfortunately, because Mr. Doherty was not, is he not feeling well? He's ill, so we're going to have to dispense with the approval of the Journal. We then move to communications from the Board of Regional Commissioners. We have at least 2 members of the Board of Regional Commissioners here.
Well, I'm certainly sorry to hear that my namesake, Bill Doherty from Quincy, is ill. You know, I always look forward to seeing him. He looks just like my cousin Fred. Well, a cheerful good afternoon to one and all. Are we all having fun? It's good to see 100% of you here. That's really wonderful. We were very busy today as little county commissioners, weren't we, Pat? Yes, sir. We were having some final go-rounds about the budget. You know, cutting here, slashing there. You know. Doing all of the things that, you know, making those hard choices, which I know that Ron earlier in the day was saying, well, what will it, when can we see it? And I said, you'll see it in due time and you will enjoy it. And we also heard from, and this is, you know, this is useful, we heard from Dan Gallagher from Open Cape, And he was very positive and upbeat, and said that the jobs that were anticipated being created are in progress. He's anticipating several hundred jobs during construction, as well as the implementation, of that activity. So we were concerned as county commissioners to make sure that there was indeed progress, and there was indeed some evidence that the jobs that were promised were indeed coming to be. So far, it looks good. What else did we do tonight? That was about it, right?
We signed the lease between the county and Open Cape today, so they now officially will be residents on the Hill, and this now will enable them to go out and do their bidding for the renovation of the interior. And he says that will take about 6 months to do, but they're on target. They're on target with all of their plans to make this an up and running operation. So it's pretty exciting. So he brought some fun and optimism to our meeting.
Slowly he turned. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Well, yes, Mary Pat, you.
Well, I have a question from Teresa. There was a plan to have a legislative update on Open Cape. Has that been finalized?
Yes, that is happening.
Microphone, please.
That's happening.
Microphone, please.
It's on now? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, that is happening on the 28th. It's going to happen at the commission offices, and it's going to be put for the delegation within the context of the regional planning. And that's the same day that's the private partnership event later on in Sandwich, so it's kind of like, a whole bunch of stuff happening on the afternoon of the 28th.
Time?
February.
The day, time of day?
1
o'clock, thanks.
February 28th.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions for the county commissioners? Yes, Marcia.
Following up on that a bit, what is the public-private event you're talking about?
Open Cape is having a legislative...
No.
There's two things. Actually, a mailing went around to all of us about that, and maybe Kelly from Sandwich could talk about it more.
Yeah, I can't speak directly. One of the members of the Sandwich SEIC asked me to forward that to you. That was the agenda items were listed on there, what they would like to discuss, and I think we're talking about two different things. And this is at 4 o'clock at Sandwich Town Hall.
Oh, okay. I do remember getting that. I thought they were the same thing. Yeah. But I also have a question about your meeting today with Dan Gallagher. Somebody I know was at the meeting, and that's not really what they heard. I guess I want you to expound more on the jobs, because what I got was that there really was, he did not quantify or qualify or anything, and the type of jobs that are coming to the Open Cape. So I was just curious and surprised by it.
Well, he talked about some national studies that have been done in terms of broadband initiatives and implementation. And there are two kinds of jobs that result from that kind of a project. They are called, some are direct and some are indirect. And the direct jobs would be the people who that Open Cape might hire to actually hang the fiber, do the construction work to actually build the project. The indirect jobs, is that right?
Yeah, indirect, yeah.
Well, the indirect jobs are those where the companies who are brought in to do work, who hire employees to do the job. He was talking about a company who had a contract, and the money was pulled for some reason, whether it was a state contract or a federal contract, I don't know which. But this is an example. And the money was pulled. And so when Open Cape then contracted with this group through an RFP, it's all done through the proper procurement process, they were able to bring employees back into their company again, because it was the type of jobs that they had done previously under the old contract. So it's sort of like an average. What did he say? There's about 296 jobs average that would be direct jobs and about 300, close to 400 jobs that would be indirect jobs. But that's like a national number. That doesn't necessarily apply to Open Cape. So he didn't give any numbers about how many jobs might be created. But they would definitely be significant. Whether they would be direct because they're being brought in through Open Cape directly, or indirect because they have contracted with a company. And mostly, Open Cape is not hiring people. There's just 3 people who work at Open Cape. And that's the way that is what they expect it will be after it's all built and the system is ready to go. That's why they are not hiring people themselves to do certain jobs. It would be far more costly. So they've outsourced to other companies and businesses for the work that they need to get accomplished during this implementation time.
It changes the subject a bit. On the NSTAR report that Commissioner Lyons chaired a group, have you accepted that report? Will that be distributed to members? What happens now with the report that you have?
It's currently in draft form, and we have a meeting scheduled next week to discuss it and to hopefully formally adopt it if that's what we believe we should do.
If I may, I might add just one thing to it. We have been given a report by a committee. The process is that we will evaluate that report, and in part of the acceptance, we will write our own report. Commissioner Lyons has been tasked with filling in the blanks on that report to make sure that her report matches the mission statement that was given to the committee, to make sure, and to fill in any gaps that the committee report covered or didn't cover. So at that time, we would be in a better position to respond to an outcome for it.
I just have 2 comments. One, I understand that the committee process was that they didn't accept public comments. You had to have written questions, and I just can't imagine a committee functioning in a way that didn't allow for public comment. If I'm wrong on that, I stand corrected.
I did attend a few of the meetings, and the public comment came at the end of the meeting. It wasn't public comment through the discussion of the task force when they were discussing the agenda for the day, but public comment came at the end of the meeting.
Okay. I do have to express the disappointment that 12 communities, Barnstable being one, asked that they consider clear cutting as opposed to spraying of herbicides, and apparently the committee took a route that, in my view, went in the direct opposite direction that 12 communities were asking. You look puzzled, but unless I'm confused, I understand that clear cutting is, it's going to be, they're going to spray herbicides. Is that correct?
I believe that Leo could probably...
I don't want Leo's answer.
Okay.
It's your committee, and what I
yes, Tom, it's our committee.
It's a process. But I've had as many emails on this as I have had on the wind. People in my town are upset about the results that they have heard of this committee. And now, if it's been prematurely published, or you haven't, it's a draft, you haven't accepted it, that's one thing. But I don't know how people voted. I heard it was an 8-3 vote. I don't know what that vote was. I haven't seen it published anywhere. And so I'm hoping that there's still an opportunity for the commissioners to take a leadership role on this and represent what, in my view, was the position of our community that we would prefer to see clear cutting in our town. And I thought 10 other communities had delivered that message too. The committee heard differently. They listened to experts and went along with experts, but I don't think our committee, our town certainly hasn't changed its view of what we would like to see on this particular issue.
Okay, I will respond on a personal basis that I personally reached out to one of the members of who had attended and suggested that I could give her a platform for, let's say, putting her views out and do that on my television program, and she's scheduled to do that on the 28th, I think, that Monday, the 28th, and she will get it.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about taking care of individual committee members. I'm expressing.
No, I'm trying to get to actually trying to get to a point, Tom, and the point is that I'm concerned that all sides be represented fairly. I'm concerned that one of the charges to the committee from my own viewpoint was that we get some information with regard to materials that have been suggested for use in all venues, because I believe that that's what the mission was supposed to look at, and not a narrow one of, you know, of NSTAR by itself. Having said that, then the other piece would be that once we knew what materials were being used, we would have data that would tell us what the toxicity was and give us some information on that. And then at that point, we'd have some type of an inventory that we could refer to. We also tasked Paul Niedzwiecki to come up with a response that would take a look at the type of thing that, you know, we're talking about here, because it was my personal feeling that if we can restrict the storage of materials at a site, at a retail store that's part of a development, we certainly should be able to investigate whether or not we could use the regulatory authority of the Cape Cod Commission to, let's say, to take a look at this material as far as its application. Now, to me, with the combination of the report that, you know, that the committee's worked on, which, you know, which although I've looked at, I believe it deserves the, you know, the attention of all three of us, and you know, and I will get input from, you know, from both Pat and from Sheila on that. But I would like to wait and hear what Sheila has to say with regard to an outcome before I come up with a final thing.
When you consider it, I hope that you'll consider the view of the Barnstable Town Council, our legislative body that voted, you know, against the spraying.
If I may, the vegetative task force was advisory. They provided a report to the commissioners, which has recommendations in it, and the commissioners will take up the recommendations next week. That's as far as it's gone. Whatever else has happened out there, and I've received a lot of the emails that you have, there were no actions taken by the committee. They are all recommendations.
No one ever calls me. I've had 3 minutes this month. Can I ask you, yeah, Leo, before.
With all due respect, I just think that having served on that committee, I think that to do all the members due justice when we talk about this, we shouldn't just go to their final decision, which was to support the plan put forth by NSTAR as a vegetative management plan. But there were also 3 other motions which were made and suggested by the committee that the county commissioners follow. One, and probably the most important, is that they established a subcommittee to continue this research. And also that while NSTAR, or if in fact is allowed to continue spraying or so chooses to, that on-site testing be done, specifically in areas to in fact put to rest some of the questions of the science. In regards to the meetings themselves, I will tell you that the meetings were in fact open to the public. There was a lot of data that was presented to us. The white page specifically goes down the list of data that was presented. A lot of scientists, a lot of doctors, a lot of people that are far more intelligent than I. In fact, I don't know why I was even on this committee, although I did learn an awful lot. And we did specifically talk about the 5 ingredients used by NSTAR as a herbicide. And when the scientists made their presentations and showed us the toxicity of those and the ability of those to travel through Carver sand, which is the soils that we have here on the Cape, and some of them, I don't have the data in front of me, but some of them came up 125,000 times lower than what is suggested a safe level. So I won't speak for the entire committee, but I'll tell you why I voted the way I did is because, again, I voted the entire white page and the entire report. And I would hope that people, if they're going to comment on the committee and the decision that they did make, that they take the time to read the entire report. Because there was some concerns and some suggestions that we continue to follow up. But there wasn't enough science presented that would warrant a vote to say ban or stop NSTAR from spraying. There's just too much other information that needs to come in. And specifically on one of the issues, and even one of the items that they're using, I mean, I have evidence that many towns across the Cape are in fact using the same products. And it just didn't seem, and again, I'm speaking for myself, didn't seem fair to ban one, yet towns are in fact still using them. I believe when you read the white page and you read the actual report voted on by the committee, you will find that it's a lot more in depth than what is being discussed out in the public, and that there were concerns that we should in fact continue to pursue this matter. So I believe all of you have a copy of it. It was the voted document, again, that was presented by the committee to the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, I don't want people to leave, people listening to this, to be left with the impression that the county has got the final word on this. I mean, what is the juice behind this report? I mean, what is the authority of the county as far as approving or disapproving of any method that Instar uses?
I think the mission statement for the committee was to identify or speak to the toxicity. Right. As far as the authority, that authority rests with the federal government, who have, that's the Department of Agriculture, who have identified the substances that are appropriate for use based upon the rules and regulations, and it is enforced by the Department of Environmental Protection at the state.
Yeah.
And NSTAR is indeed operating under that license and under that, under that authority. Yeah. The county's position is that as a body that represents the constituents within this region, we have a responsibility to at least examine this issue and to come up with some understanding of it, and out of that understanding, make a recommendation that we would hope would be one that would be in the best interest of everybody that lived here.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I just want to make it clear to the public that we're not, this isn't a thumbs up or thumbs down on the part of the county. We're just trying to enter the debate and get the information people need. So, okay, is there anything else, Marcia?
On another note, on the charter, the email from the commissioner that was missing tonight, Sheila, do you support her email?
Well, it turns out, Marcia, that it wasn't sent to me. So would you share with me exactly what your question is?
I'll read it out loud.
Please do.
I will. I'm gonna read it. Then, well, we don't have a stopper. It says the BRT, which is the Business Roundtable, and others kept a close eye on the review process last year. If you remember, Kevin Howe submitted BRT's thoughts on the matter then and felt it was heavily weighted with Assembly County self-interest. In parentheses, she writes, I think we noted that fact ourselves. Not sure who ourselves.
He was on the chart.
This is an influential group of educated people. They're committed to the review and will drive it through. Many people across the Cape find the Assembly useless. There is significant room for change for the better. If the Assembly does not become part of the process, it does not stop individual citizens from gathering 5,000 signatures and putting their proposal before the voters on the ballot. The Assembly may want to rethink their rejection of continuing charter review, which I thought we also suggested, and work with this group rather than confirming the notion of being irrelevant.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question.
Excellent. Let's start the discussion.
It turns out that last week I wrote my Barnstable County Matters column, which appeared in the Barnstable Patriot, and I'd like to read from that if I may. There was a song in My Fair Lady that asked, why can't a woman be more like a man? I was reminded of that when the discussion covered the issues with regard to what we should do about the county government. One of the follow-up activities will be when the Business Roundtable submits its ideas and version of the county charter. They will be asking for an independent committee to review regional government. Hopefully, this will be outcome-based with a clear definition of what the BRT wants. Past studies and committees have focused on structure, leaving some with the impression of a good-looking vehicle that doesn't go anywhere. But my recollection has been that they all wanted to have the appearance to be closer to a non-governmental example. The trick is how to describe regional government in Barnstable County in clear but relativistic terms that shows value to each of the constituent segments. Since I have run for the office several times and received enough votes to continue, I was being lulled into the belief that people knew what they were voting for. After all, they give us $5 million plus of the $25 million that we have as an operating budget. But, as I hear over and over again, the great majority of Cape Codders are surprised that many of the services they get and enjoy are under the control of the regional government. And then I go on with some examples. But the point is that and as a matter of fact, I am a member of the Business Roundtable, although they now meet in not executive session, but the executive committee meets, and they haven't had a general meeting of the Business Roundtable in which I've been invited in some time. It may have something to do with the fact that as the Business Roundtable has their deliberations and they talk about regional government, they forget that I'm in the room and they start talking to somebody, some jamoke about, don't you have a friend that was the president of the Mayor's Association or something like that? So I'd offer, I said, look, I'm the Massachusetts representative to the National Association of County Officials Board of Directors, and if you don't want to talk to me, I'd be happy to put you in touch with them or with another county commissioner that might be somebody that would respond to your questions. But they have an agenda. And yes, are they educated? Well, I hold 2 degrees. I guess that would qualify, and the others are, prominent business people. And I believe that the present recently elected Senator Wolf was a member of that committee, although other duties have caused him to be busy, I'm sure, in other things. I hope that responds to your question.
No, my question is, do you support what Sheila has written in here? Since obviously you weren't.
As an alumnus of the Assembly, how could I ever say that you're useless? I mean, don't be silly, Marcia. Of course I don't support that.
I'm not being silly. An email is sent out with Sheila has written it, and makes a couple of interesting comments and statements.
They are interesting comments.
And I'm leaving it at that. And I do agree with you. It'd be nice if the BRT has such a personal burr in it. With all of us, you included, the commissioners and the Assembly. They have yet to come forward with anything. And it's a little interesting that one of the commissioners seems to be carrying their water, and I guess my question to her is, why? And what
Shall we ask the empty seat?
Well, the empty seat has just answered. Thank you.
We asked John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to continue the same discussion, Bill, thank you. There is, as you well noted, 100% of the Assembly here wishing that you had the same representation out there.
Well put.
And at the risk of being irrelevant, could you enlighten us as to these influential group of educated people? Are there 100 of them? Are they Cape-wide? Who are these educated people that have never come before us, to my knowledge? The other 11.
Oh. Well, now you're making like 12 angry men. There are women on it, too. Wendy Northcross is a member of it. Paul Neswicki is a Paul Neswicki is a member of the Executive Committee as well. Bill Zammer is on it. Let's see, Elliot Carr. Spiro used to be on it, didn't he?
Let's get to the real issue here.
Yeah,
not make it.
Before we go any further on this road, I just want to make one thing clear, is the only thing that I know about the Business Roundtable and its involvement in a proposed charter review is what Elliot Carr said at that meeting of that meeting. Now, what Sheila says they say is another thing entirely, but until I hear from them, I'm not going to assume anything. In other words, we don't know what they want. They haven't talked to us. They haven't said so. I don't want us to go too far down the road of saying, well, who are they and what are they doing, when we haven't heard anything from them yet. So, I mean, we can talk about...
She should be here to respond.
But, I mean, we can criticize her, but I'd hate to go too far criticizing the roundtable, because for all we know, they may not have pushed any of this. So, anyway, that's my editorial comment. Yeah. Spiro.
Can I change the subject?
Please do.
I noticed on your agenda for this today's meeting, you were approving or establishing a new fund. Can you illuminate a little bit what you guys were talking about? Did you not approve a new establishment of a new fund?
What? Could you give me a little bit more description?
Commissioner's actions, number 2, approval and transfer and establishing of new fund. Did you guys establish a new fund?
I'm going to talk a little bit about this.
If it's coming up in Mark's presentation, I'll wait.
Well, typically, sorry about that, the establishment of a new fund is actually a pretty pro forma task that the commissioners do, and it's usually when we received a new grant, and I don't remember the specifics of it. That's why the commissioners don't either. It's something they do every week, and we set the grants up in a separate fund because you have to track the money separately, and you have to do all those things separately. So
it's almost housekeeping as opposed to a new initiative or
yeah, that's
a new pot of gold.
Housekeeping is the perfect answer.
Were that it would in a pot of gold.
Are we done with the commissioners here? Or are we...
Okay. So how much more fun are we going to have?
Now.
And by the way, Sheila should be here to respond to that question.
Yeah, but we'll get another shot at this later on. But if you, I guess we're. Thank you very much for showing up. Okay, now we're going to get what amounts to a biannual, what's it, every 2 years? Is that biannual? Biannual financial review from County Administrator Mark Zielinski for the benefit of a refresher course for those of us who've been here before and an introductory to those who are serving their first year.
Quiet, please.
What? No, we're going actually before the financial overview is coming now.
Am I ready?
You're ready.
Am I? Well, thank you very much. You know, it's nice to report that a discussion of the county finances is the lightest topic that we'll have so far today. So that's probably good news, I think. So you should all have one of these in front of you. Hopefully you all have a copy of that. It's just a copy of the presentation that I'm going to go through. And as Mr. Bergstrom has indicated, I do this every couple of years, and it's timely now because we have some new delegates here. So, but it's also a good refresher for everybody here. It's a good refresher for me to kind of go through the presentation, put it together, and remind myself of some of the things that we do. So what I'm going to talk today is about the budget structure. You're going to get the budget on March 16th, a month from now. As the commissioners reported, we're just wrapping up a couple of items in the budget. I don't think there's any major issues in the budget. It's still a tight budget, although I will report as I go through this presentation that deeds revenues are up a bit, so that's good news. So I'm going to talk about the budget. I'm going to talk about our account structure in Munis. We use the Munis financial accounting structure. Many of your towns use the same. Just tell me if I'm too loud or not too loud or breathy or whatever. I'm going to talk about the major funds that we have at the county and what those represent. I'm going to talk about the reserve funds that we have at the county. And I'm going to talk about the reports that we do on a periodic basis, yearly, monthly, whatever it is for the particular report. So in the budget structure, you'll see that there's a revenue summary that shows all the funding sources that we have. When you get that, most of you, I hope, have seen a copy of the budget. There's an expenditure summary. We do for you, we started this a few years ago, a statement of major variances in each of the groups that we report on for each of the departments. So when you get the budget, you'll be able to see which ones are significantly different from the previous year. And it's based on a program budget. We have sub-programs. The programs are general government, county services, health and human services, public safety and planning and economic development. And then under those programs are sub-programs, which are really the departments. And each of the departments have identified goals and measures that we identify in the budget. So on the revenue side, just on the budget structure, what it does not include, if you remember, is it never included the sheriff's budget, and certainly now it doesn't include the sheriff's budget because on January of 2010 that was transferred to the state, but it never included the sheriff's budget anyways. It doesn't include certain special revenue accounts like the septic test center. They get separate money from the state and from grants for that. All of the energy efficiency funds doesn't include all of those, and there are some grants that aren't included on the budget piece as well, and it doesn't include the license plate funds or the expenditures associated with the license plate funds. On the revenue summary, we have certain general fund revenues, the biggest being the deeds tax. That's actually, we're up a little bit from where we thought we would be, and we're up compared to last year. This year, we've budgeted about $7 million on the deeds tax. We're collecting a little bit more than that through the midpoint of the year. The county tax, which is almost $2.8 million for this fiscal year. That and the Cape Cod Environmental Protection Fund tax, which you see below, are assessed to the towns. They go right on the town's cherry sheet, so they're not in the town's budget per se, but it's calculated in the town's tax amount. And those go up 2.5% every year. There was a period of time when we had surplus revenues at the county that we weren't increasing that amount, but over the past few years when revenues have been tight, we've been increasing those 2.5% every year. And as I was saying, those are assessed on the towns based on an equalized valuation calculation that I get from the Department of Revenue. And it's basically, in the simplest terms, and it's a more complex formula, it basically looks at each town's equalized value of their property relative to the whole, and it's apportioned that way. Also, you'll see in the revenue summary our grants we get about $2 million in grants every year from various sources. And the Commission has some grant revenues as well on their budget. And the Commission, I should mention, I list that separately because the Commission is a separate fund, as you'll see later on. It has its own funding source, and its revenue, the CCEPF tax, is associated in the Commission's enabling legislation. And I should have mentioned earlier, a lot of times people wait till the end to answer questions. I find it simpler, especially with this stuff, and since there's so much of it. If you have a question, just interrupt me and answer it. I'll try to answer it. Talk about the deeds tax a little bit. There's really 3 components to the deeds tax when you go in and record an instrument at the Registry of Deeds. There's the state excise tax, which is $2.28 per thousand of value, and that goes directly to the state. There's the county excise tax, which is in our charter. It's directly in our charter. That's $2.70. We just increased it a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I can't remember when now. That goes directly to our county coffers and in the general fund. And there's a piece of the deeds tax added to the state's amount, which is an additional $1.14, which goes to fund sheriff's functions, and that's added to the state deeds tax. So actually the language in the county charter on the county excise tax says we can charge up to the level of the state state total of the deeds excise tax, which is 342, right? 342? Quick arithmetic. I talked a little bit about the county tax and the Cape Cod Commission tax. The EQV numbers are revised every 2 years. I'm still waiting to get the most recent one. So some of your towns have asked for the 2012 County and Cape Cod Commission assessment, and I've given them what I can, but I have to update those EQV numbers. I haven't gotten them from DOR yet, so they're estimates at this point in time. And again, that's limited it's limited to an increase of 2.5% every year. Now moving on to the expenditure side of the budget, and I'm happy to say that every year since I've been here we've had a balanced budget, and we've been able to do that in good times and in bad. And the last 3 years I think we could all describe as bad. It's been a pretty tight budget. I think we are emerging from that now, so it's a little bit better. I think the budget's looking a little bit better. But the good news on the expenditure side is we've been able to maintain a high level of service and a high level of quality service. And we've weaned ourselves off of including in the budget any projected year-end surpluses or treasury balance, and we will continue to do that for 2012, so I think that's good news. We display the budget by department and all the departments of the county, but there's also some other areas in there that we maintain, including public safety. I'll talk about a little bit more. The shared costs, which are really the costs that are shared across all departments, and the debt service piece. And I mentioned public safety now because that area still includes really one thing in particular. It does include the Fire Training Academy, which is obviously a very important department, but we, as part of the sheriff's transfer legislation, are still required to pay the unfunded liability associated with the sheriff's retirees. And for the number for 2012, you'll see in the budget that I bring over a month from now, $963,912. We will be required to pay that through the funding schedule of 2038 at the retirement, and that includes all the pre-2010 retirees of the sheriff. Yes, Richard?
Is that the same dollar amount all the way up to 2030?
No, it actually increases right under the schedule right now because we're on a 4% increasing schedule. We just changed the schedule a little bit. It will increase over time. It will decrease assuming people live less than the actuarial calculation. That's the only time it would go down. I'm not going to say anything. Yeah.
So as the group gets smaller...
Would you use your microphone, please?
So as the group gets smaller, the money can decrease?
It could decrease, right. Depending on if you live longer than what the actuarial table predicts, the liability goes up. If you, by chance, live less than the actuarial, what it predicts, the liability goes down.
Okay.
But we want all our retirees to live long and happy lives, don't we?
Mark, just,
yes.
On that number, does that represent the entirety of the obligation associated with the sheriff's retirees, or just our obligation? Is he paying into it too?
No, it's the total obligation. Anybody from pre-2010, December 31st, 2009, prior, they are still our responsibility. After that point, they are members of the state retirement system, and it's their problem. Now, one thing I will say that's very good, and if you have service, say, in Barnstable County, and you retire from Barnstable County, and you have half of your service with the city of Boston, you retire from Barnstable County is going to send a bill to the city of Boston for half, basically, of your pension, because half of your service was there. It's called the 3.8C assessment. In this case, that's not going to happen. The state is not sending us any bills for any retirees post-2010 associated with the Sheriff's Department.
I guess my question is, obviously, before the separation of the Sheriff's Department from county government, he must have contributed toward the retirement. In other words, he had a separate budget. We didn't look at that budget. They're telling us our budget covered the entirety of his
for the ones who are retirees who were left here. So now his budget with the state, he has his own retirement assessment that he has to pay to the state retirement system, if that's how it works. The state's a little bit different. But
was there a reason why he would pay his employees through his own budget but not contribute to their retirement?
Well, that's what the legislation specified, and I believe, Ron...
I'm talking about pre-2010. I'm talking about 2005, 2000...
Pre-2010, his budget covered this. I would assess his budget, the proportion based on payroll, because that's how it did, for the retirement assessment. So pre-2010, when he was here at the county, we would get a bill from the Retirement Association, and I would prorate it, his portion, based on payroll, because that's how it worked. He would pay that proportion of it, which was about, at that time, 65%. I think he was 65% payroll. We were 35%.
Okay.
I guess what I would say, Ron, I know it's hard to swallow that we're kind of stuck with this assessment, but it actually, avoiding the 3.8C legislation going forward, it makes it a good deal. And typically, that's how the state has done when they dealt with these transfer situations. And there have been precedents in it before. Quite a while ago, court employees were all part of the county, and the state transferred all the court functions and the employees to the state. They did the same thing. They left the liability associated with retirees prior to the transfer with the local county. They've done that before. Yes, Chris.
This is just in case this request did not make it to your desk, but we did ask at the last meeting. We got a printout of the December 31st expenditures versus budget. We did ask for the revenue side.
I CC'd you on an email that I sent to Joanne. Joanne's the assistant treasurer. Asked her to generate a revenue report and scan it, and then as soon as she does that, I will forward it to you guys.
Great. Thanks very much.
Let's see, did I cover everything in there? Yeah, I did that. On the expenditure summary as well, we have the shared costs, miscellaneous and contingency, you'll hear that name. Basically, in the shared costs budget are the following major items. It's our retirees' health insurance costs, both the counties and the jail, house of correction. That's the other piece that was left for us, and of course that's associated with the retirees from the jail and house of correction. We are no longer paying the active jail or house of correction employees' health insurance. Remember, we were doing that before as well. They are now part of the state system. We're not paying that. Our salary reserve lines are in the shared cost budget. All our property and casualty and auto insurance costs are in the shared cost budget. And then there's some other shared costs in there. Workers' comp is in there. Some miscellaneous and other miscellaneous and contingency items. There's some money in there for computers and for advertising and those types of things. And then also on the expenditure side is our debt service. We had the general fund debt service, which for this year's budget we have $50,000 in principal. We are going to have to do a major bond issue. As you recall, years ago when we were flush with cash, we were paying all of our capital fund items out of the general fund cash. The past couple of years we haven't been able to do that, so we're going to have to do a bond issue, so the principal amount will be going up. And the interest, $175,000 we've budgeted for 2011. That number will go up just a little bit, I think, in 2012. These aren't on the budget, but I wanted to mention it because it's a huge piece now of actually our debt picture. If you just look at it from the debt perspective, is the septic loan program fund. As you know, we do septic betterment loans. We borrow the money from the WPAT, is the Water Pollution Abatement Trust at the state. We've done now, I think, our third $10 million authorization from the Assembly. It's been so long, I can't remember. Now our principal repayment every year for 2011 will be $500,000. That'll be growing. That's paid for out of the septic loan program fund, and the way we pay for that is we issue the loans at a 5% interest level. The Water Pollution Abatement Trust charges us 0 interest. So, and then with both paying for the principal and the interest that we collect on that, we use to pay for the staff at the septic loan program fund. The staff salaries and the staff costs are in the budget. The principal repayment piece is not. Now let me talk and turn a little bit to the account structure in the budget, and in some of the budget reports you'll see some of these accounts. You won't see the full account code anywhere. That's in the system, and that's what the system uses. There's 24 digits actually on that account code, so it's pretty useless. And we used to have, I think, a 10 or a 12-digit account code. So of course when you implement these new systems and you're improving it, all the people kind of roll their eyes when you show them what the real account code looks like. But you don't really need to pay attention to that. It just kind of gives you a sense of those 9 elements are those pieces that are between the dashes. That's what they represent. There's only really 3 pieces that anyone really ever needs to know. That's the organization code, or the org code, the object code, and sometimes where it's used, the project code. It's not always used on everything. The org code is really a shorthand, and it tells you from those other things what the fund, what the department is, what the sub-department or the division of that department is, and what the group is. And the object code is really the line item, and I'll go into that a little bit more. And then for some of the projects that we establish, if we're budgeting for, we establish a project code, and that links specific projects either in different funds or in different departments. Sometimes a project will be funded some out of a grant, some out of the general fund, or in 2 different departments like the Lyme disease piece. And so the project code helps you link all those together if you want to find out what you're expending on that one project. On the object codes, the line items, 5100 to 5199 are all salary or salary related. 52 to 52.99 professional and technical services, contractual services, those types of things. 5,300, 53.99 supplies, materials. 400, 499 miscellaneous charges. That's where insurance resides, rental charges, those kinds of things. And 500 to 599 are all equipment line items. 600 to 699, when we were flush and we were giving money to towns, that's where those went. We haven't done that in a while. 779 is miscellaneous expenditures. One of the things that's in there is unpaid bills from the previous year. We budget a small amount because as soon as you hit July 1st, once or twice, I'll get a bill that someone forgot to do an encumbrance for, and I have to pay that bill from the previous fiscal year. So we paid out of unpaid bills. I think there's a $4,000 budget on that item. 800, 899 is miscellaneous capital expenditures, all the capital pieces here, and that's really how you look at the capital fund. And then 900 and 999 are all the fringe benefits, health insurance, retirement, Medicare costs, those types of things. And they're consistent for all departments and all the funds. That's what they are for no matter what fund you're using, no matter what department. These are the major funds that we talked about. 001, of course, is the general fund. 4 is the license plate fund. 5 is the capital fund. 10 is the Cape Cod Commission fund that I mentioned. They have their own revenue source. Then 2,000, 2,099 are various grant revenues. And then 8,000 to 8,001 used to be the sheriff's. Now all of those are just special revenue funds. I think I have a little slide on special revenue funds here. Yeah, special funds. So we have like the dredge. We keep, that's an enterprise account, so we keep all of the dredge revenues and expenditures separate. We still do life insurance for some of the towns from the old Barnstable County Health Insurance Group. We have since merged for that purpose with the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, but we still do life insurance for those. Septic Betterment Loan Fund is a special revenue fund. I mentioned the statue fund because those lovely statues that we have in the front of the courthouse, we might have made a small contribution to those, but what we really functioned as was the Treasury Service. We collected the money all through donations. We paid the bills to the sculptor or to the place where it was cast or whatever. So we do things like that every so often. And then the Energy Efficiency Fund is a special revenue fund. Reserve funds, these are the reserve funds that we keep, and they will be reported when you get your budget in a month. And on a page it says how much we are proposing to put in each of the reserve funds. The statutory reserve is under Chapter 35, and you can set that at 10% of the county tax assessment amount, which we have been doing every year. So it's about $200, for this year it's $269,000. Encumbrance are continuing appropriations, any encumbrances that are rolling over from one year to the next. Or continuing appropriations if we have a project that you're not ready to encumber the money for yet, but you need it to continue that project going from one year to the next. We set money aside for that. Last year, the two of those together were $983,900, about $1 million for those two, more or less. Receipts reserved for appropriation are monies we set aside to use in the next year's budget, and those right now, last year they were zero, and we expect this year, going into 2012, that will be zero. The stabilization fund was set up in the 2000 charter change, and in that we have about $1.44 million. There's a legal reserve, an insurance reserve, various types of reserves there. And then we've set up a capital improvement reserve, which at one time had about $1.8 million in it. We used $1 million of that for the gym renovations, and that money is still available for that. So there's about $824,000 in the capital improvement reserve.
Mark, can you go over a stabilization fund again?
Yeah, the stabilization specifically, it's a little more fungible than this, but this is how we've identified the stabilization reserve. It's a legal reserve, about $450,000. Insurance reserve, $300,000. Pension liability reserve, $540,000, and an early retirement liability reserve of $150,000. That's how it's been identified. It's a little more fungible, I say, because some of those can be used if we set up a qualified trust for the GASB 45. Been reading the paper about the OPEB liabilities that are out there. There was a big article in the Sunday paper. Marianne Bragg did on that. There was also something on NPR this morning. It's kind of a national issue, so it is out there. Right now, as you know, GASB 45, which is the pronouncement from the government accounting standards boards, requires you to calculate that, and we've been doing that every year. Actually, we do it for about 30 units on the Cape. We do it through the retirement actuary. It has to be an actuarial calculation, and that holds the costs down for that. It's only about $1,600 a unit to do it that way, so that's a good way to do it. And then we provide separate reports to all of those units as part of that. It doesn't require you to fund it, but it requires you to know what the amount is and to state it in your audited financial statements. So it's going to be an issue. I mean, more, eventually Moody's or S&P, somebody's going to say, okay, so you have this liability, how are you going to pay for it? Yeah, John.
What are the 30 entities that you do? The 15 towns?
It's the 15 towns, fire districts, school districts. I can give you a list. I'll give you a list. Now, financial reports. What are there's, I think, maybe 3 major reports that are floating around that you will see. There's the Treasurer's report. That's an excellent kind of year-end synopsis of what happened in the previous fiscal year. Well, before, let me change things. So this is the Treasurer's report. It's sent to the Department of Revenue, DOR, local services, every year. It's a required report. It's published in August or September for the previous fiscal year. And really what it shows you is, for that year, the detailed receipts and expenditures for every fund that the county holds. And there's probably over 200 funds that we have established over time. It also reports back to the state how much we paid in unpaid bills or any salary transfers that we did throughout the year, and it shows what the debt service schedule is and will be for the next fiscal year. So that's a really useful report. You'll see that come out in, like I said, August or September. I can get you last year's copy as well. It's a very valuable report to kind of see what we've done and where we are, and kind of how much money has kind of flowed through the county's coffers. Then the audited financial statements, the general purpose financial statements that you'll see, and I think you should have gotten draft copies. I think I saw a letter to that effect. So the draft, that's for 2010, and you'll see the balance sheet, the income statement, and then all the notes, and the notes are where the action's at, so that's particularly useful to pay attention to. And then there's a couple other pieces that are part of the audited financial statements, the management letter, which describes a little bit about the issues the auditor has seen as he's gone through their review of our information for the previous year. There's a federal award program supplement, and then there's the supplementary information piece. And of course, the auditors are Sullivan and Rogers. You're all familiar with them, and they've been our auditors for a while, and they've done a terrific job for us, I think. Then we have monthly department reports. I think this is what you're talking about, Chris, and looking for these. We do a revenue report every month, an appropriation control report, which is, I think, the one that you've seen in a some eyes form. We do an open purchase order report and a detailed activity report. These go to the departments. It's their department chunk of that every month. So we'll be happy to share those with you if you feel you're not getting something. Those are available. And actually, what we would prefer to do is actually be able to just send those to you electronically. That's the easiest thing to do now. So that's pretty much Finance 101, and I did that in what? Half an hour or 20 minutes? I don't really know. If you have any questions at all, I'd be happy to take a call or email me. There's my number. That's my direct line and my email address. And Joanne is the assistant treasurer if you need anything. And I'm not available. Feel free to call Joanne. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I know we're going to get into the budget, the actual budget itself, within a couple of weeks now, but if anybody have any questions on this process or anything on this overview, Tom?
Mark, do we have an irrevocable trust on the health insurance?
We have not established I don't know if they call it an irrevocable or qualified now.
It's Chapter 30, is that there's a separate, there was a statute passed to allow us to do that, right?
You can do that,
Yeah.
yes. It's less clear how you invest the money. Remember, at first, we were not thinking about, well, why don't we do it through the retirement associations, because they have the structure and the funds and all that other stuff in place, but that didn't get passed. So it just gives you the authority, any unit, any municipal unit, to set up an irrevocable trust, which is the first step in using the higher discount rate, which lowers your liability.
I think you turn your mic off.
Gotcha.
So when we allocate...
that was purposeful, I think.
When we allocate our health insurance costs, is it by each department?
Yes, you'll see in the budget, it's by...
every department has, so if a department saved money, maybe an employee left or whatever, and then there's a surplus in their account that year, that right now can go back into an overall monies that are unexpended at the end of the year.
Yeah, it'll be, exactly.
But if we created a trust, and if we pulled all those insurance costs out of the individual...
well, now you're talking two different things, Tom.
Where I'm getting to is, if you pulled it out, and then when you had excess money in that account, rather than the department saving it, now the county has saved it, and let's say there was a surplus of $1,000 the first year, you put it into, an account, right, whatever, however you want to categorize it, and now you've at least begun a mechanism to fund your unfunded liability.
Yes.
Is that something that the county would consider?
Certainly, it's something that we would consider. Here's the complicator on that. I just spoke with the actuary that we use at the Siegel Company, and Kathy Riley. She's probably been here and maybe given a presentation. If not, she should. She's very good. I just spoke with her and kind of we're just starting the process to do the GASB 45 calculation as of June 30th of 2010. That'll be the next time we needed to do that for. So she asked me to ask 3 questions of all of the participating units. Have you set up the qualified trust? That's what the word she used. If yes, how much are you funding? Are you funding 100% of your ARC, your actuarially required contribution, or less? And if it's less, and these were why she had me ask the questions, is if it's less, then she has to do a little more work, so we're going to charge those units a little bit more money, because you have to use a blended discount rate, and because the key to the number is really what discount rate are you using. So if you can invest, if you're funding it and you can theoretically take that money and invest it like we do at retirement and earn additional income on it, such as an 8%, pick whatever percentage you want, so to speak, then you can actually, in the actuarial calculation, you're assuming that the discount of those liabilities is faster because you're earning more money in your investments. So to book the lower number, you have to have the trust and investing money in it. Otherwise, you have to use a more municipal rate number. I think we're going to use 4, 4.5, 5, whatever number we use.
But I've gotten your presentation. Have we been putting anything aside as of yet on an annual basis?
We did several years ago. We put money aside for the pension liability. We could easily use that for the GASB 45, because really the pension liability is on a track to be paid off. Right. We know that because we have a schedule. The reason I'm saying this long-winded explanation is if you put $1,000 aside every year and your ARC is $1 million, you're funded 1,000 over 1 million, so your blended rate is going to push you almost all the way down to that municipal rate that you'd have to book anyways. That's what I was trying to get at.
Or $1 million.
Well, that's the trick, and that's the problem, obviously, that municipalities are how to finance that, how to pay it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't ask when you had it up there, but under the expenditure summary, you were talking about debt service, and I think it says listed now as principal about $50,000 with interest $175,000. I think one of your comments were that you were going to be going out for a bond issue on that.
Yes.
Is there a reason? I mean, is there a project that you're anticipating, or?
No, the way the capital fund works, Leo, is in every budget we get authorized to spend money out of the capital fund. They'll be identified as certain projects in there. We spend out of the capital fund, and you can essentially negative spend. When we were flush with cash at the end of the year, in that you'd have a negative balance in the capital fund. All we do is take some of our surplus, hate that word, cash, and cover those expenditures, and your capital fund would be zero. Right now, we haven't been able to do that. So for the past couple of years, anything we spend out of the capital fund, there's a negative balance there. I have to issue bonds to cover that negative balance, and that's typically how the capital fund works.
Speaker. Mark, thank you for the segue, because my question was about surplus. Are we allowed to run a surplus?
Well, sometimes you don't know whether you're going to get a surplus or not. Correct. When you do your projections.
You project.
Prior to the changes that we made in the 2000 charter, that was a less clear answer. We did, but, you know, it was difficult to make the case that you could. But now we certainly can, because you can put some of those funds, surplus funds, into the reserve accounts.
You went directly to the answer I was listening for, which is we don't have a free cash account. We're not allowed to carry a free cash account.
No.
But you could park the money if, in fact, a surplus materialized in the reserve accounts until such time as you've identified appropriate expenditure for it.
Correct.
And in a second question, license...
You missed all the fun that we had when we had surpluses. You know?
Oh, I didn't miss... I wasn't here for the fun, I'll put it that way.
No, I guess that's good.
Many of the towns are waiting with bated breath for some of the surplus funds, which they never received. License plate funds. I caught the commissioners' meeting on January 5th, where you had made the comment that the EDC funds now are bypass the assembly. They're no longer presented, I'll use that word, through the budget, but in fact they pass around the budget directly to, maybe you can explain the rest of that, because that's about all I could follow.
Yeah, well, the question came up last year about the license plate funds, and it all has to do with the language in the legislation that created the license plate fund. So this question came up, the EDC actually had asked it, and we asked Bob Troy to look at it, and he gave us an opinion basically that says, based on the language in the license plate fund, it says the money goes directly to the county commissioners. So he opined that they can take a vote and expend the license plate funds in any manner that they so choose. And so that's this, for this year, that was the first fiscal year that we did that. That's actually what happened. The EDC brought it, kind of happened in pieces just because of the timing, but they brought the license plate expenditure program to the county commissioners, and the county commissioners voted on it.
If I may, you don't need to answer this, but it really would then be at the discretion of the commissioners to involve the assembly in the discussions after that point.
I wouldn't answer that. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Because she's here, but I had this discussion with the Mary Pat Flynn, and it would seem the question is one of an appropriation. If the state has made an appropriation of funds to the commissioners, can we then intervene between that appropriation and the commissioners and make our own, in other words, can we reappropriate money that's being appropriated by the state? And I think that's what Mr. Troy, Attorney Troy, was discussing, saying once that appropriation is made to the commissioners, can the assembly elbow itself in the way and say, well, wait a minute, we're not going to let it get to the commissioners, we're going to make a separate decision on where it goes. So, I mean, there is a legal issue, but I'm looking toward the cooperation of the commissioners as well as some of the other members. But
I guess I would answer that carefully, of course. My answer to that would be, Ron, is that if the commissioners said that was the way they wanted to do it, then you could do it that way. But if they said otherwise, then otherwise is it.
Yeah.
It's their discretion, I think.
Yeah, I just don't want the Assembly to think that we can be given ultimate discretion on something when I'm not clear from the discussion I had and also from Troy's opinion that indeed we could do that. So even though we did it for...
Although I would say that over the past, we've been doing this, I think we started in '98 was when the license plate came in. And, it's gone through various iterations about large grant programs, small grant. It's pretty much the same thing. It hasn't really changed all that much. Nothing new under the sun.
Okay, are we ready to digest this for a few weeks before we get the Commissioner's budget a couple weeks from now? Okay, thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks.